with Agenda 2030, there's 17 sustainable goals, right? And the 11th goal is sustainable cities and communities.
Mm-hmm.
But the way we're heading, does it look so sustainable? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just, you know, put it out there for us. You know, obviously you made this documentary, you put a 3-part series, which I love, by the way. That's why I'm here. Where, you know, we wouldn't be here otherwise. And it's cool to actually get the perspective of these real-time people that have done this for decades, you know, that have actually done this research and seeing like where we're going, and it's not a really foreseeable future, is it?
Yeah.
The New Zealand housing market is an absolute disaster. It has, for at least a decade, utterly failed to keep up with demand for new housing, and when cities can't grow up or out, prices can only go one way. Auckland is now more unaffordable than San Francisco, and if you've got one basic rule in urban economics, it's don't have a housing market that's more screwed up than San Francisco's.
When I hear talk about an affordable house, and an affordable house is supposedly $500,000 or $600,000 or $700,000, it's laughable.
Advocates of density try and block sprawl, advocates of sprawl try and block density, and they both succeed in blocking each other.
We have the 3rd biggest new houses in the world, even though I think we have the 20th highest income in the world.
The Reserve Bank has talked a little bit about financial stability implications. I worry about social stability implications.
Yeah. So basically the background for the doco was that, so I'm a research economist, and I've been working a bit on housing, or it's been in the background of the research I was doing. And I found over the years that the coverage in the media was very superficial and lazy, and the steps that different governments, Labour, when it was national time national, were taking were again very superficial, sound good, but not really hitting the cause, the root problems.
Yeah.
So I had some idea, but I wasn't expert by any means, and I thought, you know, I was chatting one time with my friend and I'm doing the videos for these. Wouldn't it be nice if it was just like, we can get people on camera that know their shit and be working on it. I know a few of them that have been working on it for 20, 30 years, and make it more available for the, you know, for New Zealand to hear, okay, this is how we got here. Here are some solutions. So people have better understanding of what's going on when they read another scary article about, oh, it's them, it's the councils, no, it's the Reserve Bank, no, it's the migrants, no, it's the foreign investors. So I have a clear idea of how whatever that article is fits within it, and whether it's gonna hit the mark, whether a new change that the government is doing or anyone is doing has any chance of making housing more affordable. And so it started with so we chatted about it, said, hey, why don't you do a movie about it? Like, you know, you obviously know some of these people, and so okay, let's give it a go. And with very little understanding of how hard it's going to actually be. You probably know. Like, easier said than done. And it started with the concept I had is basically get someone, put them in front of the camera, and let them talk, kind of like what we're doing here. And a mate of mine said, well, no one's going to watch it. No one's going to watch a 2-hour interview with, you know, an academic. Or so that's where I started to, you know, add info, mix it into a more digestible, like 10-minute episodes. Yeah, and kind of what I learned, I feel it over time, the coverage became better, talking more about the infrastructure problems. Why can't they just all of a sudden build 100,000 houses? The problem in the housing market, the problems with not enough workers. So I feel the coverage is improved a lot since when we started in 2020. But still, yeah, the goal was to make that info in a digestible way and accessible way. Again, so when you hear about Kiwi Bill 2, you have an idea, okay, what is that going to do to the housing? And is this the right move? What about this other problem? Are they dealing with that? So make politicians more accountable, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What were some like key elements that maybe you already knew, obviously hearing it straight from the horse's mouth of these people telling you what was the reality of it, but maybe some key elements that you're like, oh, this is really interesting, like something that really got you?
Something that I wasn't aware of and didn't understand how important it is okay, they say, well, they don't build enough houses. That's one key story. And question is like, why not? Why houses in the UK are cheaper than here? UK is similar size, a fraction of the population here. How come houses are so expensive here? So it's true they're not building enough houses, but something I didn't know was that councils are stopping more houses being built. And they're not doing it because they're evil or they don't care. It's kind of dry, but basically when more people come to New Zealand, it's good for central government. They get more people that can pay taxes, more businesses can pay business taxes, people spend more, there's more GST. It's good for the central government. But when you need to build a suburb for all these new people, the council has to pay the bill for upgrading the sewage or building new sewage or all the infrastructure around the house. And they're not allowed to take a big debt. So they're very, very constrained. They have to pay for something that they'll get paid by rents over 30 years. They have to pay it for now. So they got a kitty that's enough for a very short time, but to build I'll try to rephrase it. They basically take all the costs without any of the benefits. And because they can't go into debt, they have to say no to development of new areas or making current areas more dense. And then they have to deal with all the local residents that don't want a new apartment block in their neighborhood. And they got nothing that they can do to tell them, yeah, if you do that, we'll improve this or we'll improve that, because they got no money for it. So, but who designed that system? That's the central government designed that rule. And that's something I didn't, like, I knew they don't build enough houses here, but understanding that it's not a mistake, it's a design flaw of the system. Yeah. So that's one thing that I wasn't aware of.
Do you think that system could have been built better, or do you think it's been built purposely, to benefit maybe certain people?
I think that's, again, I'm not expert on it, but I know that compared to other parts of the world, councils here don't have a lot of power. They deal with like sewage, zoning, rubbish collection. In other places like in the States, in Australia, they have a lot more power. So I think it's part of a bigger design that most of the power will be with the central government, not with the local. With the local level, not the local level.
Local authority.
Yeah. I think this is just one aspect where it can lead to a really big mess. Yeah.
And where do you see this mess going if it doesn't change?
Okay, so there was some big changes that happened since I started doing the doco. National and Labour agreed that anyone can, without consent, convert their house into up to three-floor houses, which should increase how many houses there are in an area, which should help with affordability because there's more supply. There's some other changes, but one thing that one of the people I interviewed said, look, without changing that basic system that set local councils versus central government against each other, they'll probably find ways around it. Maybe they can't stop it, but they'll make the process so painful and so slow that no one's going to bother with it. Or they'll find a way to, in practice, that nothing gonna change. So even though there's big changes, but the basic flaws are still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, same as like they changed some things, but there's still a monopoly effectively a monopoly Fletcher's for material coming in. You don't change that, material will always be more expensive than what it could be. So you can tweak with, you know, how many migrants come in or what's the interest rate is doing, but if you don't change the core factors that have been here for 30, 40 years, you're still going to have the same problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And being, you know, having the crisis, what happened in 2008, do you see another one coming as well?
I think there's one on the way.
Yes.
Well, it's a different one. In 2008 was a collapse of the financial system,
Yeah.
or close to collapse. I don't know, it's a different breed. I mean, you got real supply chain issues, so they will increase the cost of anything we want to buy. And you had for a long time too much money in the economy, supplied by the Reserve Bank.
Yeah.
And you had big spending, debt spending by governments. In 2008, it was mostly the financial system is kind of losing its shit. But yeah, I think we're already in one. I don't know if it's gonna be a collapse like in 2008, or we're just gonna have 10 years of like shit time. Yeah, I don't know if
Yeah.
If I knew, I'll be very rich.
Yeah. Because it doesn't just seem to be housing, isn't it? You got the housing, now you have the fuel prices, and then talking about food shortages, it just becomes a whole mountain full of things, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more like the crisis happened in the 70s when OPEC increased oil prices, when constrained the supply of oil to the West, and then it's called in economics a supply side shock. So it's not that all of a sudden people want to spend less, so that's usually what causes a recession. Is I save a bit more money, you save a bit more money, and we both lose our jobs because no one's spending anything. It's more, we can't bring enough stuff here, so it's more expensive because there's queues with boats and there's logistical problems to bring stuff from A to B. I don't know how you solve that.
Well, I think for me it's being too reliant on one country, isn't it? You know, you got the world's factory like China.
Yeah.
You know, when you shut down a place like Shanghai for more than 3 months, that's 40% of China's trade.
Yeah.
And so that's the chain of events, isn't it? A domino effect, as you say, of all these boats waiting to get here and all that, you know? It's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, because there's a book from the 90s talking about how pencils are made. You know, you got the bit of wood, you got the lid, you got the charcoal, and the amount of countries the material go through. It's not just China making it in a factory in China. You probably go through like 7 or 8 countries. Right,
to get all the materials put it actually
together. From A to B to, you know, because one country you extract it and then you package that bit of wood and then you move it to another country and you unwrap the packaging and you, so when you have something like COVID, that's, you know, you got lockdowns and when you get a lot of countries and you'll have a big mess from it, a big delays. And it's interesting because the increase in commodity prices, so all that material, started a year ago, but we're only feeling the cost of the final product like through inflation. Inflation last year was fine, it was very low, but all the prices of merchandise went up, and now it's kind of catching up. Maybe it's like when a big rock falls in the middle of the ocean, it'll take time until the waves, or we got an earthquake in the ocean, it takes time until the wave hit the shore. So maybe now we're feeling a problem that started a year ago, or... Yeah.
Crazy, eh? Yeah, no, I remember seeing, there was like a photo that was posted online, but I've seen a product similar to this before, and it was just a normal fruit sort of salad, you know, packed into like a little plastic container, and it said, you know, product from Argentina but packed in Thailand, but it's sold in Australia.
Yeah.
You know, and so that vice versa, you know, relying on so many other countries to get it done. Like, why is not every country just doing their own thing and just creating? I mean, something simple as a pencil, right? It's not
Yeah.
complicated thing, you know.
But I mean, there's this benefit for globalization, at least how that's my understanding, because each one specializes in what they're good at.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? And I mean, in the since the 90s, since globalization started, like if you look at the proportion of absolute poverty, people that have less than $2 a day, it's plummeted. So I mean, there's good and bad in everything.
Sure.
He created a much more complicated system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
it becomes too reliant though, eh?
yeah, and something like COVID, all of a sudden you see the flaws, but before that, yeah, when things were fine, it was great.
Yeah, and I think a big one that I got out of your documentary is also the actual workers as well. That's a big loss here, because a lot of them just ditch off at Australia. Yeah. And they end up staying there. They don't come back, do they?
Yeah, the construction workers. Yeah, it's always going to be a problem, I think, in New Zealand, as long as the salaries are better there and the weather is better there. Maybe with climate change.
Well, that's the strangest thing. Yeah, right. and that's the strangest thing, right? Is that, you know, you have these houses that are going up and they're worth so much X amount of dollars now. You'd think they'd get paid more, wouldn't you? You know, for actually making these houses. Yeah. Which is quite strange too, isn't it?
Yeah, because what went up was the land. So still, you sell a more expensive house, but you bought the land for much more.
Right.
So as a construction worker, you know, it's not part of your profit.
Sure.
You spend more on land, you sell the house for more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now we got a different problem with workers. We just don't have enough of them. Again, because of COVID or government decisions to. And yeah, it might look fine at the start because we get big wage increase, whoever can find work here, but at the end of the day it will lead to higher inflation. So you're not better off. And I think New Zealand always been, well, not always, but last few decades been reliant on migrants to do jobs that other people don't want to do, or we don't have enough of, like neuroscientists, or we're a small country.
Sure, yeah.
And you add that a lot of people move to Australia. If you don't bring people when other people leave, you'll end up with shortages. And
and you know, because you're from Israel, you know, being from there, like, how's the housing situation there?
I think it's worse.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, they also...
And how so?
They also have a very fast-growing population. It's very fashionable in Israel to have 4 kids. It's a tiny-ass country.
Yeah.
You take probably somewhere from South Auckland and tip Cape Rena, that's Israel.
Wow.
And then 2/3 of it is a desert and hardly anyone lives there. So you got the third of that, and maybe like 8-9 million people. So you'll have a housing problem, and then everybody bring like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids. A lot of the land there is owned by the government, and they're just not releasing it fast enough. It's just bad planning, and again, they have similar problems with council versus government, central government. What's good for central government is not good for councils, and just how the rules are designed. So you have these conflicts. Yeah, it's funny to read New Zealand news and Israeli news, because every country writes it down as if it's only a problem in their own country, and it's a unique problem that only we can solve, but you see it in... It's the same, yeah.
Same poo, different
I think because
smell.
everybody copy and paste every other country's policies and laws.
Yeah.
So they end up with similar problems, or... Yeah.
Well, that's where it leads to me about the sustainable goal they're trying to achieve. So they say under the 20th agenda, because the UN and the WHO are quite closely tied. I mean, the WHO treaty they've tried to sign globally. I don't know if you heard about that. For any health pandemics for the future.
Okay.
And it just fell through because not everyone wanted to sign it. But they got most of the countries on board.
Yeah. And what does that entail?
That entails that they fall under the same regime, the same rules, regulations, same emergency powers, etc. Yeah. And so when you're saying, you know, it's quite funny how, you know, one country just focuses on itself. I think for me it's to just distract what's going on outside. Because if people start to see that pretty much every country's under the same regulations and the same problems, then we
Mm.
start to see that it's a global problem. It's not just, as you say, a national problem. Is
Yeah.
it? Yeah. Because
Yeah.
people fling from one country to the other, but then ends up with getting the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
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 Same situations, same problems.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think cooperation is important.
Mm.
Yeah, like with the pandemic, I don't know if everybody, I don't know your opinions about it, but I kind of feel like, I don't know if it's true, but if everybody just stayed at home for the first 4 weeks, it would have been over.
Yeah.
But you need everybody to agree in every country.
Yeah.
But yeah. Or things like climate change, you need cooperation.
Yeah.
Because if one pollutes and the other not, then the one that doesn't pollute has more regulation and hurts their own businesses, and the one that doesn't pollute basically gonna beat them in the market, could sell whatever, whatever they want for cheaper because they don't have all these regulations. So no one's gonna be the first one to self-regulate. So some cases you definitely need international cooperation. I guess it's the devil is in the details.
Yeah. It's hard to balance, with everyone trying to do their own thing. I mean, look at China; they're just taking the lead and doing what they want, and even if it is illegal in so many international laws and stuff, they they do it anyway, right? So it's hard to find that cooperation, like you say. I mean, we'll see what the future holds, eh? Yeah. Is there anything else you wanna add to on top of what you think that, or maybe what people could do to help? Is there any way that as an individual that we can actually start driving towards a better future?
If you're a fan of civic engagement, basically most of the people that go to, when a council decides if to start a new suburb or redevelop, they'll have they will have a process with the public, and overwhelmingly the responses they get, at least from what I heard from the interviewers, the people I interviewed, is that the people that are homeowners that don't want to change anything, the NIMBY is not in my backyard, will be the most vocal force. So if something that could help at your local level is to be more involved and go to these towns hearings and say, hey, okay, so having an apartment block here is not nice for aesthetic, but we need somewhere to live. So someone to raise these other voice, not the voice of the boomer. What else? One of the people I interviewed recommended to move to Australia. He said, look, if they don't look like they're going to sort it anytime soon, just...
That's right, what's his name?
Andrew.
Andrew, the last one.
Yeah.
He goes, yep, and that was it. And he goes, anything else? Yeah, he ended it like that,
Yeah.
That's nuts, Yeah,
that's the only thing. And aside from like shamelessly advertising my
for sure.
doco.
Well, where can we find? Is it just on YouTube?
Just on YouTube,
Okay, cool.
Eyal's on hosts, making sense of New Zealand's affordability crisis, which ended up being a really bad name, because if you search for Eyal's on toast, I thought it would be catchy, but it's a terrible name for search engine optimization.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
But the doco itself is amazing, guys. So if you haven't seen it yet, please check it out. I'll add it to the description,
Awesome.
and I'll add it to this part right now. Add it on here. I'll put it as a blimp so people when they search they can find
awesome.
it, and then it looks like they're part 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you
for your time, and hopefully
pleasure.
people sort of engage it more, and understand that this is something that's not
or
just
move to Australia.
Yeah. Either engage it more or move to Australia. That's what you've come down to pretty much, isn't it?
That's how it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.